Hi guys, I've got an interesting little game today. So a little bit of background. I've bought a series of chess lessons with a FIDE master who is taking me through my game and looking for ways to improve. And one of the most particular ones is being really principled in the opening. So, you know, for me, where I am in my progress at this point in time, then I think that it's still a case of getting the fundamentals right. Okay, so what I'm trying to think about very much at the moment is the same kind of things: control the center, develop all my pieces, get my king to safety, get my king castled, centralize my rooks, and then you think about starting an attack. So that's the general pattern. That is how you would like a game to evolve, right? Ideally. And I think in this example, I'm playing a player from Canada's 100 points below me in rating, but I really want you to look at the difference. And I'll explain it as we go through. The difference between the way that I develop and prepare to engage my opponent with what they do. So the differences are quite subtle but really important. Okay, so I'll take you through the game. So I start with e4. My opponent replies with a quiet e6, perhaps preparing d5 coming up next. So one principle: if your opponent offers you control of the center, then you should take it. So I'm now controlling these really important squares. Black plays another fairly quiet move, preparing to fianchetto his light squared bishop on b7. So I'm thinking, well, he's giving me the freedom to keep developing and protecting. So what do I want to do? I want to protect these good pawns that I've got in the center, and I want to develop my pieces. So easy way to do that: bring out both my knights, bring out both my bishops, and get a really strong pack going on in the center. He fianchettos that bishop, so my e4 pawn now is attacked once and defended once. That's okay. So I can safely bring out my other knight to f3, which is now double defending my d4 pawn. Black plays another pretty slow move. He still hasn't advanced beyond that 6th rank so far. So now I think let's bring out my bishops. Let's keep up the basic good work. Now this one I think is a serious mistake. Okay, so what I want you to be looking at right now is Black's king and the safety of Black's king. Right? So knight to e7 has blocked off a diagonal from his queen. So that's no longer available. He's also blocked in his dark squared bishop, which was already blocked in because this pawn had only moved to d6 and not d5. So his queen can only move to 2 squares, and that bishop can't move at all. Okay, so how's he going to castle? How's he going to get his king to safety? Right? I bring out my other bishop, my dark square bishop comes to e3. So now both these pawns are defended by a knight and by a bishop. So they're both double defended, and there's no attack. There's no attack coming up. Right? So what Black is doing is he's playing very slowly and very cautiously, very conservatively. But he's not... He's way behind in development. He's made those 3 pawn moves, where I've only made 2, and he's moved them only 1 square forward each. He's kind of developed 2 pieces, but that knight just looks very, very poor to me. And we'll see how it really comes round that this hurts Black's game. Another really slow move, f6. And of course the f-pawn is the forget about it pawn. You shouldn't move that pawn unless you really need to. So what's he opened up now? He hasn't let any of his remaining pieces that he wants to be developing, that bishop, that knight and his queen, he hasn't done anything to improve their options. All he's done is added a diagonal to his king. Right? So move my queen forward to d2. I now have options. I could castle long, I could castle short. Right, I'm ready now to complete my development by castling. Black is still way off. Finally dares to dip his toe onto the 5th rank with e5. Now, you see what's happened here, okay, is black is doing things kind of the wrong way round, right? He's now engaged his opponent. He's engaged white. He's engaged me in the game. But his pieces are still on the back rank. His king is still not castled, okay? So I look at this position and I think, okay, important thing in chess, just because there is an obvious move, right? D takes E, for example, doesn't mean you should always just do it automatically. And that's a huge difference, I think, between beginners and intermediate players. When you start to realize that I don't have to react to everything my opponent does, okay? So let's look at this. So if I take the pawn, then black will probably recapture with either the D pawn or the F pawn. Either way, my situation isn't really improved. But if black takes me, so e5 takes d4, I've got an option then of maybe recapturing with my knight on f3, because the e4 pawn is still double defended. And then, so this knight could recapture there, and then maybe jump into that lovely square on e6. So that would force the queen to move. I could then grab the bishop if I wanted to, and maybe end black's chances of castling. I'm not sure I would actually want to capture that bishop. I think I might be happier leaving my knight there if I can, maybe reinforce it somehow. Because if you look at it, black's pawns, 7 of black's pawns are on dark squares, and his bishop is trapped and entombed inside that pyramid of dark squared pawns. Okay, so right now his light squared bishop is pretty good. His dark squared bishop is really bad. Not only has it got no squares to move to, but it's also preventing his king from castling. Okay, that's all because of that really sloppy knight e7 move. Okay, so I decide to castle queenside, and now my development is complete. We're on move 8, okay, and look what I've done with my moves. Okay, so that is my 8th move. I've moved 2 pawns. You've got to move 2 pawns in order to develop both your bishops. Okay, I've moved both my bishops, I've moved both my knights, I've moved my queen. Okay, that's my 7 moves. 8th move, castling. That is the quickest that you can develop all your pieces and castle. So I feel like I'm in a very solid position here. I have played principled chess. I could think about playing d5 maybe next, which, you know, this knight on e7 really has got very, very few options available to it. It can't advance to these 2 squares. It can only advance to, like, here. But it's really not making much progress up the board, okay? And now, this I think is the big fundamental error, okay? Black has now locked in engagement with me. I had the opportunity of maybe pushing d5 next, but what he's done now, he's pushed his pawns into the middle of the board, saying, come on then, let's start a fight. But he doesn't have the backup. His pieces are not ready to enter into an exchange. Plus his king is exposed in the middle of the board and vulnerable. Right? These light diagonals here on both sides look really bad, really dangerous for that king. So let's see how it works out. Okay, it's only a few more moves in the game, really. So I capture. So I calculated it through, figured I can capture on e5. If he recaptures, I can take with a knight, and I win a pawn. I don't even need to do that yet. So what I do is capture on d5, and just look how quickly this game falls apart for black at this point. Okay, at this point we're looking. Okay, black is not hasn't finished development, but is it such a bad situation? Well, as soon as the action starts, the weaknesses are magnified. Okay, so I take, black recaptures. So what I don't want here is I need to stop d5 to d4, which would fork my knight and my bishop, that would really force me to take with the knight, and then queen could take or pawn could take. So I'm going to lose a piece, whatever. So I have to capture on d5. But that's absolutely fine, because look at my, this band of minor pieces in the middle of the board. Really not afraid of anybody at this time. Black recaptures with the knight. I recapture with the knight, and he takes again with the light square bishop. Now look at the board. Look at the story of the board. Okay, we've just had a few exchanges, a little flurry of exchanges, and now Black's king looks naked and afraid out there in the middle of the board. And the reason is because he made a really bad move with his knight, and he wasn't thinking about normal, clean, principled development. Okay, so I come in with a check with the light square bishop. He's pretty much forced to advance with the pawn. I move back here because now his bishop can't take, because I have queen takes queen, and the king can't recapture because the queen is protected by my rook, which is there because I have castled my king, and obviously his rooks at this point in time have played no part whatsoever in the game. Neither is his dark squared bishop, neither is his knight on b8. So he's moved a few pieces towards the middle of the board, and he's basically just swapped them all off. So now, this is why he looks in such a perilous situation. I capture the bishop. Pawn captures, queen captures for free. I'm now looking at the rook on a8. But I can't take the rook on a8 because then queen takes queen. But again, he reacts to that threat when he didn't necessarily need to. Now my knight comes in, his knight captures, and I capture with check. Queen moves into the way, and I move queen to b5. And now my opponent, with nearly 22 minutes left on the clock, sits there and does nothing for 20 minutes and loses the game by abandonment, which is not very sporting. But this is a horrible situation right here. So Black is in check. He can't cover with the queen, block with the queen, because queen takes queen, again protected by that rook. The only move that he's going to have would be king to f7, at which point I can play queen to f5 check. As soon as the king moves or the queen covers, I can then go in and grab the rook, and it's really game over. And notice how, although most of the board has been cleared, my 3 pawns here, a2, b2, c2, haven't moved. Right, they're still in place. I haven't needed to move them in the whole game. f2, g2, h2, they're all still in place. A lot of my games actually, maintain this pawn structure quite deep into the game. Compare that to Black's pawns, which are looking very sorry indeed. Okay, so that was a surprisingly easy win, and the thing to take away is that we have these principles in chess, and we have them for good reason. So pay attention to what they are. Right? I analysed the game with my coach the other day, and I hadn't castled my king. I was just enjoying the tactics and trying things out and little mini attacks, and I neglected castling my king, and that is the reason why I lost the game. So, I'm just still taking it back to basics. Remember these things, okay? So let's look again just from the beginning. Look at the moves that I play. Right, central pawn. Okay, Black doesn't respond. Central pawn, Black doesn't respond. Knight into a good square. Fianchetto bishop, that's okay. Knight out, another weak pawn move. Bishop out, bad knight move, blocking off all the options for his queen and all the options for his dark square bishop. Okay, my bishop comes out. Now my pawn's very, very happy in the middle of the board. He plays another indecisive, weakening pawn move, I would say. I move my queen forward. He makes another pawn move, and I castle. I've now completed development. He's a long way off. That's what you need to do, right? Other options later in the game is I could move my bishop, my rook from h to maybe e1, centralizing my rooks. Okay, but this is what you're looking for. Central control, king safety, all your pieces developed, and then you start your attack. Okay, hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.